Welcome back. It's Pints and Politics here at the Barley House, a part of the Hampshire Now program, fueled by the Smutty Nose Brewing Company. Old Brown Dog on tap for us today for this edition of Pints and Politics. We're joined by United States Senator Rand Paul, one of the most important political figures in the country. We appreciate you joining us for Pints and Politics. Welcome back to Granite State.
Glad to be here, Chris. Thanks for having me.
First off, kind of assess where you are in the race at this point in time. I don't want to talk too much about horse race stuff, but we've obviously been talking to you for about a year and a half now, and we always viewed you as being one of those top-tier guys. When you look at the standing right now, where do you see a lot of the support having gone that you had worked so hard to create here and create that bottom for you in New Hampshire?
I think it depends on what polls you look at. You know, there was a poll just last week, right before the debate, that showed me ahead of Hillary Clinton by 2 points. That same poll shows Trump down 10 to Hillary Clinton. So this isn't just about the Republican primary. This is about which Republican is the best to win the general election. New Hampshire, we get caught up in just sort of Republican, Democrat, early primary state, but New Hampshire's also a battleground state. New Hampshire went twice for President Obama. If we want to win, if Republicans want to win the election, I think that they ought to look at a true blue conservative, someone who came out of the Tea Party movement, but who also reaches out with the liberty message to get enough independent voters that allows me to actually beat Hillary Clinton right now in New Hampshire. We beat Hillary Clinton in 5 states right now that were won by President Obama. That's ultimately how you win the general election.
And obviously individuals do not say, hey, I want to run for President of the United States to fix this, and answer questions about Donald Trump. But you've been very strong on Trump in the last number of days, and it seems that, Republicans are getting to the point where they're realizing, hey, this guy's support may not necessarily go away unless we make an effort on our own to inform individuals about where he has been in the past. And that's been something that you really seem to have been out ahead on in the last couple of days.
Well, I started out coming out of the Tea Party movement in 2007, really. I was probably at one of the first Tea Parties, and by 2009, as the Tea Party movement was growing, that's sort of what propelled my candidacy. Beat an establishment candidate. But one of the things the Tea Party was upset about were fake conservatives. We were concerned about fake Republicans, people who said they were for one thing but really weren't. And I think that's a real concern with Trump. Is he real or is he a fake? It's a reality TV show. Is he acting? He used to be for Obamacare. He was for the bank bailouts. He's been for gun control. He said the Democrats are better at running the economy than the Republicans. I wonder if he's in the right primary or not. He's given $100,000 to Clinton recently. Most of us think it's despicable to buy access to a politician, but isn't it equally despicable to be the one paying? It's despicable to receive the access, but isn't it despicable to be buying access to the Clintons?
Has he given you money? He said that during the debate, but has he actually done that?
He's never contributed to my campaign or anything political. I do charity work. Okay. I went to Guatemala last year and did cataract surgery, eye surgery, and I'm going again to Haiti. And he has given money to the University of Utah that I go under their auspices. So indirectly to a charitable organization, yes, and that's commendable. But I think there's more going on here. He's given $1.5 million to both sides, and when you ask him why he gives to politicians, he says, I give to them so they'll do whatever the hell I want them to do. And it's like, really? That's what's wrong with politics, is that people are buying politicians and then they'll do whatever the hell you want them to do. That's what's wrong with government.
And the dynamic too is to have an individual who's used to that as the front man right now is very strange. Dean, go ahead.
Yeah, Senator, in 2014, you had tremendous national visibility and also visibility up here as well, based on your outspoken stand on the NSA, on Edward Snowden, on the data collection. A lot of people think that has sort of receded a little bit from public attention. I think you had an exchange with, I think it was Governor Christie over the Patriot Act in the debate. Do you think that issue has receded, and as a result, has that affected your kind of platform that was so visible, say, 8 months or a year ago?
I think at various times some issues come more forward and get more attention. And right now, lately, there's been a lot of attention all towards sort of one person and their outlandish comments. And that's sort of what we're stuck on right now. But I think if you ask people, are you concerned about the government or concerned about President Obama collecting all of your records all the time? If you take young people under the age of 40, 83% of young people, 40 and under, believe that the government went too far in collecting their records. The idea of a general warrant where you don't put anybody's name on it, you just randomly collect everybody's records is offensive to a lot of people. And so I'll continue to stand for the right to be left alone. Is it popular? I think it still is popular in the Republican primary. And the point I made to the governor of New Jersey was that, look, I'm all for collecting the records of terrorists, but I want to individualize that with suspicion, with a name, with a warrant, as opposed to just randomly collecting everyone's records. And I think actually most of the instances where we've been attacked, we had suspicion, we didn't follow through with the suspicion. The Boston bomber, we were tipped off on. The Garland shooter, we already knew about him, he'd already been in prison. Major Hassan, we just kept promoting the guy, even though he was writing radical anti-American stuff while in our military, we kept promoting him. The shooting on the base down there, I think we can help protect our soldiers by letting them carry weapons. At the recruiting centers, I'd let them carry weapons. So there are a lot of things we can do short of giving up on the Bill of Rights.
Senator, a lot of people are concerned about, I suppose less with political gossip columns and more about their prospects for a job. You've talked a lot about a flat tax and what you would do with the economy. If we see you as president, can you tell us a little bit, first of all, what is a flat tax and why would it help the economy? And is there any earthly hope of it ever passing?
The main thing that I want to do with any tax change, any tax change that I will support, is to lower taxes, to give the federal government less money, to make the federal government smaller. And that's most important, even above and beyond the details, because almost every other Republican wants to do revenue neutral tax reform. Even today, Trump was saying he wants it simpler, not necessarily lower, but simpler. I want it lower. I want less money to flow to Washington, and I think the way you create jobs is by leaving more money in New Hampshire. So if my tax plan, let's say, leaves $50 million in New Hampshire and doesn't send it, that's a tax cut, and that's how you create jobs, leaving money in the community. Mine would get rid of the IRS. It would simplify the tax code such that your tax return could be on one page, and it'd be 14.5% for the individual and 14.5% for the businesses. Mine is different, though, than any other flat tax that's been proposed in that it also would get rid of the payroll tax. Part of the problem with the flat tax proposals in the past is the Democrats will demagogue them and say, oh, it's only for rich people. Well, most people who make $50,000 or less don't pay much income tax. So what I decided to do is get rid of the payroll tax, too, and make it part of the business tax. So if you make $40,000 a year, under my tax plan, you'll get $2,000 back in payroll tax. It'll never come out of your check. Somebody has to pay it, but the business ends up paying it, not the individual. I think this will spread the concept that tax cuts are good to a large number of people that in the past have all been said, oh, it's only for the rich. So in including the payroll tax, I think millions and millions of Americans can say, Hillary Clinton wants to raise everyone's taxes, spend more money. I want to lower your taxes and reduce the size of government for everyone.
To what extent would you support, one of the things that stops these things from happening sometimes is the financial cost of it. People worry about that. And in an effort to get some kind of a compromise, let's say in the first year of your presidency, you're close but you don't have enough votes. What if somebody came to you and said, we'll do the flat tax, but we need to tweak it so it's revenue neutral? Is that good enough? Does that help?
Revenue neutral means you raise taxes on somebody, cut taxes on someone else, but the net effect for the economy is zero. That's what neutrality means. It means it's neutral to government. So I want it to be positive to the economy and positive to the taxpayer. If what we are for is revenue neutral tax reform, I've told people I'm going home. I'll just go home. I can go back to being a physician, which I enjoy and still do, but it's of no value to the economy to shift the burden around. You can say, oh, well, it'll be simpler. Simpler is a little better, but why even bother, if you're just going to shift the burden around? It really is, there are two places money can be. The productive sector, which are the working people of our country, and the non-productive sector, which is government. Government doesn't produce anything. It only consumes, doesn't create any jobs, and most of the time actually spends its money on things that get in the way of job production. So I don't care enough about revenue neutral to even be for it or against it or even participate. I want to have a significant tax cut, and I will make government smaller and return that money to the people.
Before we hit a break, I wanted to touch upon something a little bit that Charlie was getting to, and that's the practicality of being able to achieve a lot of the things that you talk about on the campaign trail. And you're obviously an individual who's against executive orders, an individual who believes very strongly in these ideals. How would you go about achieving the success of actually implementing these programs based upon the fact that it'll be difficult to bring along Congress with a lot of your ideology?
I think it's a good question, and kind of does go back to this other question: how do you actually practically get it done? Number one, you run on your vision for America. My vision is a much smaller federal government, a constitutional government, and much lower taxes. If I were to win, you consider that you've told people your message and they're for it. Hopefully other people win that same year like you and you get to more significant majorities. However, it's been very few times that we've actually had 60 Republicans in the Senate, a majority in the House, and a Republican president. That's why we got Obamacare. We had it in reverse. We had the Democrats with 60 votes. And we got something that was completely partisan that not one Republican in the whole country supported. Let's say you're at 54, where we are now. We have 54 Republicans in the Senate. You do have to go talk to 6 Democrats. Right. But I also have many instances where I have worked with the other side on criminal justice reform, on privacy, and on some foreign policy issues. I have been willing to work with the other side. So I'm not opposed to going to 6 Democrats and saying, what will it take? You don't get everything you want. Nobody gets everything they want. But I think you run on what you're for, and then people have to decide whether they believe you're somebody who would work with the other side enough to get to whatever that compromise is. But really, I think it's very important that people know that I'm for making government smaller and taxes much lower.
That is Rand Paul joining us here on Hampshire Now, 109-1450 and ConcordNewsRadio.com as we do Pints and Politics, the Barley House, fueled by the Smutty Nose Brewing Company. We'll hit a break here and come back with Senator Paul after this. Welcome back. It's Pints and Politics here at the Barley House, joined by United States Senator Rand Paul, as I mentioned before, one of the most important people in politics, and really appreciate him joining us here at the Barley House. And obviously, a lot of what you're talking about is reducing the size of government, but there's also many needs that are out there right now. And we think about the drug epidemic, we think about the need for investment in transportation infrastructure and things of that nature, which you had talked about all the time, student loans, you've heard all the list. How would you use a market-based approach to make sure that spending is appropriate for those levels and that we are addressing issues without using government?
I think the key fundamental thing we need to do with government is very, very simple. We should only spend what comes in. And sometimes people make this mistake that, Republicans, you're not for any government. How are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? We bring in $3 trillion. Couldn't we just spend $3 trillion? That's a lot of money. What's not responsible is to bring in $3 trillion and spend $3.8 trillion. That makes us weaker, and even if it's for a good cause, is really something that's ultimately debilitating for the country. So we have to come to an agreement and a concept, and this is a profound thing. Right. Every American believes we should, you only spend what comes in your household. Almost every American believes that on an individual basis. I think they would wish their government to do that, but it would be profoundly different than any candidate we've had in 4 decades if someone actually did that.
It would completely change the mindset of America, too, where people look to government if there's a problem. They look to government for the solution, and they say to presidential candidates like yourself or Hillary Clinton or whoever, they say, okay, we have a problem. How are you going to fix it? It is Santa Claus-type power of the presidency.
And there are ways, like, for example, our Highway Trust Fund is $15 billion short a year. I have a plan that would lower the tax on American companies to bring their profit home. There's $2 trillion overseas. I would lower the tax, see how much comes home, and the tax dollars that come home out of that I would put in the highway fund. We have an economist that is estimating that $1.4 trillion would come home, and out of that about $68 billion increase in taxes would happen not by raising taxes, but actually by lowering a tax rate.
Senator, we have one of the most expensive public universities in the country, and Hillary Clinton was just up here yesterday, and she proposed this $350 billion student debt package, and it includes tax increases, and we can talk about that. But what I'm really interested to hear you speak to is how do you, and this is something that her plan isn't clear on either, but how do you incentivize, first of all, schools to kind of control costs, and secondly, state governments to kick in more money, which is a perennial problem here in New Hampshire, from the federal level?
The first thing to understand is that there is no such thing as a free lunch. So people say, I'm going to make your college free. No, they're going to have somebody else pay for your college. And the truth of the matter is, if college is free, those who don't go to college will pay for those who go to college. And while I'm a big fan of higher education, I went to medical school and residency, and I'm a success story for public education, all of that, still college isn't for everybody, and there shouldn't be anything that says if you're going to be a plumber, welder, or carpenter, or electrician, that you should pay for college for somebody else. If you look at the 2 areas of our economy where prices are going up, where everything else seems to be going down, but prices are going up dramatically, it's healthcare and education.
Great point.
What do they have in common? They're both, the demand is subsidized by government. So when government subsidize, or when you subsidize or push demand, if the supply is held constant, the price will go up. That's where we are. Now, I do acknowledge it's a problem, and getting to the solution is harder. We also, because it's sort of like a guild, we limit who can be a college. And so if you limit it to fewer numbers, then there's less competition and less ability to drive prices down. So the first thing you should do is expand who can be a college, and you should expand the accreditation process so there are more colleges. This includes online colleges. It includes a lot of innovations that will come. As far as what we do right now, I would make it tax deductible, your student loans. Both the principal and the interest I would make deductible. So we're not actually handing you a check, but if when you're done with college you work, it's a work expense. To me, it's like the gas you put in your car to travel around if you sell stuff. So if you went to college and you paid for it, and now you have a job because you went to college, you should be able to write it off over your whole working career. There shouldn't be limits on it, and it should be very easy to do, principal and interest. We don't do that now, and that would be a significant savings for most kids.
I don't want to let you go without us talking at some point about foreign policy. There are some people who say that all the Republican candidates have more or less the same foreign policy. There are other people who suggested maybe the exception to that is you. Would you say that's fair, that everybody kind of wants to do the same thing with regard to Iran, or are there some slight differences?
What I would say is that I am different, and one of the ways I'm different is that the problem in Washington is that Democrats want to increase domestic welfare spending and Republicans want to increase military spending. What happens? An unholy alliance gets together and they increase both. That's why your debt goes up with Republicans and your debt goes up with Democrats. Nobody is really in Washington fiscally conservative. Now, I would argue that I am the one candidate who is. If you're going to raise defense spending, I'll only do it if you offset it with cuts in spending somewhere else. We had that debate. We actually had that vote, and most of the other senators, in fact, all the other senators in the race, voted against the offsets for increasing defense spending. With regard to foreign policy, there are two polar extremes. One, we're never anywhere. That would be isolationism. The other is that we're everywhere all the time. That's kind of where we are now, in the everywhere all the time category. I'm much back towards the middle on that. So I think that if there is a truth in the Middle East, is that when we have toppled secular dictators, we've gotten chaos, the rise of radical Islam, chaos, and we're less safe. So I think Hillary's war in Libya was a disaster. But there were some in our party who actually supported that, and they thought the only mistake was we didn't put boots on the ground. There are some in our party, my party, who want to bomb ISIS and Assad simultaneously, both sides of the same war. So I think what we need to do is think before we act, and I think that when you look at the Middle East, intervention has often backfired on us, and they've been killing each other for 1,000 years. We need to protect ourselves, our soldiers, and our missions, and do whatever it takes to do that. But at the same time, the ultimate victory there is going to be the boots on the ground, to be Arab boots on the ground. I'm tired of fighting these wars for the Saudis. I'm tired of fighting for the Iraqis. I want to see them marching into battle. I want to see them doing the fighting.
Final question. You like the premise of this one. It is 2025. President Paul has served 2 terms. January, new president's coming in. What will you have left the American people?
Hopefully less government and more freedom.
And in terms of overall legislative, presidential accomplishments, what are the priorities that you hope to have outside of those 2 realms initialized?
Well, if you want to expand upon less government, more freedom, that would be less debt. That would be a much smaller federal government that had many less agencies. It would mean lower taxes. But when you have lower taxes, that means you have a larger private sector. It would mean a robust private sector that creates millions of jobs. And it would be an America that people aspire to come to, that businesses are dying to get into America instead of the opposite. And we have an amazing country. We have an amazing system and an amazing amount of wealth. In 2014, we gave away privately nearly $400 billion in charity. That comes from our great system. It comes from capitalism and free markets and freedom, basically. And there's so much of that could be unleashed if we would just get government out of the way. And I want to be part of that, making government smaller and the private economy bigger.
Senator Paul, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Rand Paul here on Pints and Politics at the Barley House, fueled by the Smoney Nose Brewing Company. We'll come back with more after this.